Hello, my name is Mark Turner. I'm an academic neonatologist in clinical practice in Liverpool in England. Today, I'm going to talk about how our Pediatric Trials Network, C4C, Connect for Children, integrates the input of children and young people into our work. As background, C4C is funded by the Innovative Medicines Initiative. IMI is a public-private partnership between the European Union and large pharmaceutical companies. The aim of the initiative is to speed up drug development and make it more predictable across many domains, and our work on pediatric research infrastructure contributes to this. Our consortium is made up of 10 originator FPA companies, European Federation for Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations. We have 21 countries with national networks that host our national hubs. We have 8 large specialty networks, 2 large patient and parent organizations, and work with more than 240 large children's hospitals across Europe. The vision of C4C is to provide better medicines for babies, children, and young people through a pan-European clinical trial network. One way that we are delivering this vision is through strategic feasibility advice. By this, we mean work that's done before the protocol content is finalized or before the content of the pediatric investigation plan, the PIP, is finalized. And we can provide guidance that helps ensure innovation and also host multi-stakeholder meetings modeled on the work of oncology to develop consensus about the best way to pursue a drug development opportunity. And we include children and young people with their parents in all aspects of this work. So the framework is outlined on this slide. There is a Secretariat for Strategic Feasibility that receives requests, and then for each request, the Secretariat develops a feasibility group to answer that request, and that request then leads to some advice. The strategic feasibility groups are made up of experts in methodology, clinical experts, and children, young people, and their parents. And these groups, as well as delivering the advice, will continue to develop white papers, will host multi-stakeholder meetings, and develop tools for the involvement of children and young people in clinical trials. Over the past year or so, we've had 26 scoping interviews with 7 industry partners and 2 academic sponsors. 5 of those scoping interviews meant that the request was not needed, so the request did not proceed. 17 have been completed and 4 are ongoing. 7 of the requests have included patient and public involvement, PPI, and most have included 1 or more clinical expert groups, and others have included some innovative methodologists. On the right of this slide shows each of the groups that we have represented and the number of requests that have been addressed to each group. And these groups meet regularly to upskill in the regulatory content of their work and to improve the quality of the advice. So as I say, we include children and young people in all the work. And as you know, this is not just simply a question of sitting down with some children and asking them some questions. We need to consider a range of key areas. First of all, we need to be specific about the level of participation and how much power is shared between adults and children. We need to decide where the focus of decision-making is. Is it individual or is it collective? Then decide on the model of participation, be it consultation, collaboration, or led by children, and be clear that the term child or children refers to a vast range of people in different conditions. For example, children can include young people up to the age of 18, although we need to be careful not to use the wrong words for the wrong age group. We also work with some specific quality criteria for the patient engagement and involvement work. And this slide summarizes the patient engagement quality guidance. It's important to have a shared purpose that's agreed before the work starts. It's important to have respect and accessibility, to ensure the representativeness of all stakeholders to the extent possible, to be very clear about roles and responsibilities, to have a clear idea about the capacity and the capability for engagement, to be transparent in communication and documentation within confidentiality, and then to focus on continuity and stability so that sustainability follows on with time. So we apply these principles all the way along the drug development process. We have had impacts on the assessment of the pediatric investigation plan, so that these plans have gone to the Pediatric Committee for academic and industry studies. There's been some impact on the design and planning of studies, and the team have defined a return on investment or return on engagement so that we can assess how much this is worth financially, but also to society. There's also been a lot of work to build capacity in PPI for patients' organizations and at national hub level, because PPI for clinical trials is different from asking people about the food or the decoration of the hospital. And so we've had some training about PPI, including a module in our advanced course about pediatric clinical trials and pediatric drug development. So the pillars of involvement of children and young people and families are patient centricity, return on engagement, innovation, and the portfolio. And each of these pillars contributes to the overall quality of the work. So we like to be available throughout the planning and preparation of the study design, the study conduct, and analysis and dissemination. Each of these topics benefits from the unique perspective of children and young people. It's important to listen to the people who use the medicines when defining unmet medical needs. It's important to listen to people during protocol development. What's possible, but also what's worthwhile, and how do young people see the risk-benefit assessment? One common use of patient-public involvement is to assess the patient-facing information, such as the assent form, consent form, patient information leaflets. But this role is not the only thing that young people can do, and it's important to think about these broader roles as well as the most convenient way of helping with study documentation. During the study, the families and young people can comment on study recruitment, suggesting strategies to overcome blocks and tools to support adherence. And then at the analysis and dissemination stage, all trials submitted to the EMA now need to have lay summaries, and the young people are very able to help refine the content format and health literacy aspects of these lay summaries. So our methodologies include multi-stakeholder meetings, interviews, questionnaires, simulation of clinical trials, and focus groups about specific topics. The process starts off with a sponsor making advice request, and that comes to our single point of contact across Europe for all pediatric clinical trials. The single point of contact, or SPOC, then passes on the trial to the Secretariat for the expert advice, and there'll be a phone call to scope out the needs. Then there's the work package 4. Secretariat puts in place a unified contract, which includes reimbursement, and the patient public involvement cross-cutting theme looks for participants using contacts and a PPI database. The cross-cutting theme can also inform the design of the PPI activity. The PPI activity is then executed, and information is fed back to the Secretariat and to the sponsor. And on the right of the slide, we are gathering this information to support an analysis of return on engagement and return on investment. So here's another summary. The contracting process is done by the PPI team that feeds back into the sponsor. So some examples of this work. I've got 6 examples here together out of the total of 17. So in the first study, the cross-cutting theme helped with recruitment of individuals, and this ended up with 4 individuals having interviews with parents in 3 different countries, looking at the disease burden and the acceptability of the possible study. Similarly, the second advice, which is now finished, looked at the acceptability of a potential study design, including a placebo arm. The third advice looked at recruitment and individual burdens faced by parents and teenagers during routine clinical care and during the clinical trial. And so we have a standing system for asking these questions from sponsors to children, young people and their families. In the fourth request, we had a virtual focus group, and in another request, there was a strategic feasibility group that focused on the acceptability of the possible study with PPI involvement. And then another way of doing it is through individual interviews with parents to scope out. And in this case, this team looked at the acceptability of study design for an extension study. So participants in PPI value this a great deal. There's the idea that they're not alone, that they're working with other people, that people are behind them, that research is important, and there's high levels of satisfaction with the work that's being done. So our lessons learned are that we need to choose carefully who is able to join the groups, because they need sufficient English and sufficient understanding of the disease. Then there are different legislations across the world on collaboration between industry and patients. This needs careful negotiation, and contracting is very time consuming. However, by consolidating all this experience and integrating it with other aspects of the clinical trial network, doing the trials, then we're able to provide an effective and efficient service that builds economies of scale and saves sponsors or CROs reinventing the wheel for every study. Thank you very much.